You guys might be seeing now that finally John Wick 4 came in the theater, and it is probably my most anticipated movie this year, almost by far. Basically because of how far this franchise came. I remember watching the first movie in the cinema, like some friends of mine told me to watch it. I was 14 and I just got stunned by seeing, first of all, Keanu Reeves as a 50-year-old man being the protagonist of an outstanding movie. You see that the budget is a little bit low, but you can see how much the investment paid off. The second movie, I did not watch it. In the movie, I watched it at home. The third one, I remember vividly watching with my father and my grandfather, and was an outstanding experience. And I think they got the best aspects from the first, the second, and the third movie completed in a single 3-hour movie that is John Wick 4. So please don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to leave a like, and let's go with this review. And first of all, if you've never seen the movie, no problem, because even though you're not going to get so emotional with John, it's still a very enjoyable movie if you do not watch the last 3 movies. I can say already, right off the bat, that this was the best movie out of the franchise, and I'm going to explain a little bit why. The first movie came out really solid. I think people put that in the highest standard because of how unexpected this movie was and how much money they got to put on that movie and how it delivered. I think this was on point, but you can see the visual effects were a little bit down, but that's the only best thing that I can say about it. The second movie, the plot left a little bit because of the story. I think the ending was great, and the action scenes got a major improvement from something that was already excellent. The third movie, they made it right. The story was better than the second one. The action scenes, I don't know how. They got a major improvement of how they level things up before they use only physical combat with their hands or mostly combat with weapons. In the third movie, they started using more complicated weapons by starting using, like, for example, swords in the beginning of the movie and battling also like motorcycles. Like, this elevated the franchise even more. And for some reason, the fourth movie elevated to a huge standard that I think there's only there, like, that someone could possibly believe that was real, putting up an outstanding conclusion to the franchise. Also, unbelievable correction for Keanu Reeves, because you need to remember that he's almost 60 years old now. He's in shape, still doing unbelievable things. People using the biggest amount and variety of weapons that you can possibly imagine. This movie elevated everything. The cinematography, if you watch the movie, you see there is a huge evolution also with it, where the shots were just so perfectly done, where they go to some places where they have the contrast with the black suit, for example, of John Wick and the snow, or have this contrast with him and the Continental. All of those shots were perfectly done, making this movie so pleasant to see. So just to finish this spoiler-free zone, this movie is definitely a must-watch. I was surprised during the whole movie about things that happened throughout the story. So I think it is important for you to watch the movie first, then maybe come here to see their opinion and maybe change your mind. Change your ideas, put in the comments, bunch of things. But for me, as I said, they elevated the level so high for the action movies to come out. I think the only action movie franchise that it might be better or at the same level, it's Mission Impossible. So, of course, John Wick deserves a 10 out of 10. Perfect action scene movie. So let's just go to the spoiler zone. So, gonna go fast through the plot here in the story. Then I'm gonna talk about the action scenes a little bit deeper. John Wick goes after the Ancient One just to get his revenge on the High Table. So now you just see that he's doing all of the wrong things that the table is telling him not to do. So they have to elevate even more the standards of people who need to murder John. So even the difficulty gets way bigger. The stakes get way higher. And we see that with the Marquis, the actor, Bill Skarsgård, who was amazing in this role. He passed the feeling of like a guy you needed to fear, a guy you did not have any empathy with him. It was just like pure evil, and he used all of his power and influence to just annihilate everyone and everything who was in his way, and started by destroying the Continental Hotel in New York and killing Sharon, the receptionist who worked at the Continental. You know, coincidentally or not, Lance Reddick, who was the actor, also died a couple weeks before the movie launched. So, I mean, it's such a shame that this amazing actor died. He made also the character on Horizon Zero Dawn. He was outstanding also there, one of my favorite games. And he did a fantastic job mostly in the third movie, where it was amazing. And it's just a tribute to him, this movie. So John Wick, of course, he cannot go to the Continental in New York because it doesn't exist. So what does he do? He goes to the Continental in Osaka in Japan. And of course, a bloodbath happens over there. And I'm going to speak later, okay? So after all of that happened, he made a plan with Winston, which was he could challenge the Marquis to a hand-to-hand combat, like a duel, to finish everything off. But to do that, he needed to be part of the house, who he made part of who made part of the high table. And he was part of one of the tables called Ruskaroma, who was his family, but he broke the seal in the third movie, so he needed to make a new one, and by doing that, he needed to redeem himself. By doing what? He needed to kill the mob boss called Killer, who, because of all the things that John Wick did, Killer murdered the leader of the Ruskaroma. But of course, it wasn't going to be easy because there was also two assassins following John Wick to get his reward on his head, because it was valuing at that point like $25 million for his head. So these two assassins were Kane, who appeared in Osaka, and Mr. Nobody, who appeared there as well. Kane was a blind man who gave his both eyes to the high table, paying off or something, and for some reason they made it plausible that he was blind because he used, of course, a cane with a blade inside it, and he had incredible, almost superhuman hearing and perceptions, and he used it all, of course, he used this doorbell's proximity, right? He uses that to identify this in the silent where people are trying to approach him, and he, for some reason, had the greatest aim of all time because he could shoot the person as the sound were there. And of course, Mr. Nobody, who was an assassin who, after thinking through the movie, I was thinking like, who is this guy? Because he came out of nowhere and he was just doing all of those things, and finally understanding the movie, Mr. Nobody was an illusion to John because it was a very similar character. It was almost like a mirror to him. He was a guy who was doing everything to reach out his goals, who we thought he was good. He had a dog, he was a very protected person with his dog who helped him in his battles. So it was almost like a guy hunting himself, and he was a very interesting character to see. He was a very skillful guy also. He surprised me where he was looking like Muhammad Ali, punching people all over the place. But of course, it's John Wick. He just killed Killer and reclaimed in Roscahoma. Then he goes, finds the Marquis to do the pact of making the duel possible. And after they finish preparing everything for it, where he had a day to go to a church in Paris. And I was thinking like, okay, so he's going to make the duel and then the movie's going to be over. Like, what's going on? But it was far from wrong because the longest fighting sequence of all time in a movie maybe was done in this movie because, of course, he was not going to make it easy for John to reach out for his goal. He put the price on John Wick on $40 million, and everyone in Paris was just hunting him as he needed to reach out to the chapel. And the sequences I'm going to talk a little bit more later, okay? And they made almost like a fusion with Fast and Furious because of the ability of him driving and using the guns, all of that. And after slaughtering probably half of the French population, he reaches out to the top where he, of course, the Marquis wasn't going to beat him one-on-one. He asked for Kane to take his place. So they did like a shootout where they needed to just stand like a Mexican shootout stand where they needed to shoot them. And if the person did not die, they needed to approach even closer, and the final strike came, hits John Wick. And it's like, oh, it's over, John Wick missed. Then, of course, Marquis did not waste the opportunity and asked Kane to do the final blow. But he was dumb because he didn't pay any attention to John Wick because he didn't shoot. So as Marquis is standing in front of him, John Wick blows his brains out, ending the Marquis' life and sending a message to everyone what he did to reclaim his revenge. And after all of that, he dies watching the sunset and remembering his time with his wife. It might be wondering, like, this is just a sad ending for him. And of course, the path that he was following, he wasn't supposed to have a bright future. And you see, throughout the movie, they were talking about how he needed to stop doing what he was doing, but I think he wasn't finding peace that was happening because of the things that happened, because the consequences just escalated quickly from every single movie. The first movie, he killed the Russian mob guy and his son for killing his dog that his wife gave him. The second movie, he kills a guy who was part of the high table inside the Continental, so the stake got even higher. The third movie, he came back to the Continental, who made the hotel again excommunicado and made an army go inside the hotel as he killed all of the army inside the Continental that the high couple directly sent them there to eliminate him. So the stakes got huge. And the fourth one, where he killed the ancient one, who was practically the guy who was above the high table. And in the end, he killed the representative of the high table. And of course, this didn't end the high table, but he sent a message, and I don't know how this is going to lead to next movies that they might do it in this franchise. And of course, not with John, but there's a sequence who's being produced to have Ana de Armas in the movie called Ballerina with Keanu Reeves making an appearance in the movie. Maybe they can do a movie with Mr. Nobody. He's a very interesting character. I would like to see a movie with him. Or maybe the daughter from the Continental Hotel manager, who was also a great actress. So we might see how this goes. But I think the conclusion for John Wick, as I said, was perfect because the evolution of fighting sequences and everything was just getting ridiculous at this point. Like in the next movie, what was going to be like? Like we're gonna be able to see the movie if the story doesn't go on. Like we see John Wick, of course, because of the story, but the great action scenes makes us stay to watch the movie. And we've already reached the peak. I think we need to stay at his best, and it's gonna be a remarkable case to movie studios to study this franchise and understand what people really enjoy, which are the perfect mixture of fantasy with great choreography, with great fighting sequences, and of course a mixture of visual effects and practical effects. So let's go with the fighting sequences that they had in previous movies, because I think they have a huge part of making this franchises awesome. And let's just remember some of the most memorable fighting scenes that we had from all of the franchise. I don't remember all of them, to be honest, but I remember most of them. For example, the first movie, which they have the sequences in his house, which was the first action scene that we actually saw from this movie, which introduced him like he's the guy. The fighting sequences, there he goes to the club where he kills all of those guards searching the Russian mob son. That was also interesting to see his combat with his weapons in an open place. In the second movie, as I said, at the mid the stakes higher. That one that I remember vividly, the action scene was the action sequence that they had as he was hunting down that Italian guy, where he killed loads of people, where they had that glass room. Also, it looked like they were going to the Louvre Museum. All those art pieces around where he was just slaughtering people back and forth. The action scene that he had, of course, in Rome, where he was in the undergrounds, where he has hidden all of those guns inside the walls. As he was progressing throughout the way, he was getting more guns to just kill all of them at the dark. That was stunning. One of my favorite scenes, of course. The third movie, there are so many that I think I'm not gonna remember all of them, because the first one that I remember was the remarkable one, was they were fighting with knives inside that abandoned studio, where there was like dozens of knives where they were just throwing at each other, where in the end he killed this guy opening his skull with a knife. And the first scene actually where he was fighting that NBA player Boban Marjanovic, where he broke his neck with the book. And the sequence, of course, that he had using his motorcycle to escape, and then a bunch of ninjas appeared with swords and motorcycle appeared to kill him. And I think, of course, the fighting scene inside the Continental, where he was just defeating hordes and hordes of hugely armed men, where they had literally no space to shoot. Like everything was covered in protection, so he needed to get like really close to them, got his gun to kill them, and he was not using any sort of protection or anything, just in a suit with a bullet protection, but it was not compared to what they were wearing, and he was getting buckets. Nonetheless, of course, where he was fighting, of course, that boss battle with swords, I think that was really, really impressive, was way longer than I was expecting. I think for that, it's something that John Wick was making as a thing for people to contemplate. You sit there in the movies, watch that, eating your popcorn, loving everything that's happening, seeing that slaughter scene. And of course, in this last movie, they had plenty of fight scenes to delight. For example, the fighting scene in Japan, where he was in the Continental, not only fighting the guards, but the fighting sequences that the samurais having against the guys from the Marquis, where they were using bulletproof suits and they were using swords with bows and arrows. All of the mixture of the Japanese culture was just unbelievable. It was awesome. Kane over there, of course, killing all of them with ease, like it was in his noodles, not caring about anything. He's just slaughtering all of them. In the final scene, of course, fighting him, Kane against Shimazu, where he was just like an amazing samurai lookalike, and his daughter, Jesus Christ, she's stunning, Jesus Christ, and she was a great actress, of course. I think it was her first acting job. She nailed it. And the sequences in Japan was one of the best of the whole franchise, actually. We saw Shimazu's daughter using her fighting skills also to deal with all of those guards, and of course Keanu using his Krav Maga and Jiu-Jitsu skills to put the guys on the ground, or of course using his battle IQ to taunt enemies and make him go to some spots so he can beat them the place that they go with the mirrors. And then fighting Kane for the first time with his ability to trick him for not breathing, as he was a blind guy. But of course he has great hearing skills, so they have an awesome battle that they have. Also, John Wick using nunchucks to fight all of those Marquis guards. This was a complete fighting scene for me. Another amazing boss battle that they have was with Killa inside where he was actually looking like a Street Fighter character, because he was just so fat but so fast, so strong, that him facing John Wick was so amazing. They had with him where he was just thrown in the ground, hitting his head, the staircase, where he broke his skull. It was just so visceral, and of course him fighting in the crowd with a lot of people dancing. This is almost like the trademark for John Wick. This happened in the second movie. In this movie also are people who see John Wick murdering people left and right, and they just don't care. Like they're just dancing. Like the drug that they're on, give me one of those because I want that. And of course, all of those guys using machetes also to try to beat him up. Also, the effect from the water to make a very amazing effect that they had was amazing. Then, of course, the last sequence was so huge that you can even divide it by 3 parts in this action, because the first action scene was he was using his Mustang to just flee from all of those guys. Of course, another reference to old movies where he had a Mustang, so awesome reference there. And they tried to murder him, so he goes to the Triumph Arch in Paris, and he was going to this roundabout where he was going to the wrong direction and using, of course, his weapons to kill all of them using only his driving skills and his car. And please, Fast and Furious, watch this movie, call the producers of John Wick, try to replicate that in Fast and Furious 11, the last movie, because the 10's already recorded. So do that, because this is what we want to see. Come on. And the sequence where he gets out of the car and he fights all of those guys in the Triumph Arch, like, come on. And of course, when he left the car, there's also the sequences where all the people get run over by cars, or he kills all of them. This was breathtaking. The second part of these huge fighting sequences was where they went to an abandoned house where they were shooting guys back and forth. With the huge aspect of that was also the gun that he was carrying, because he got a gun from one of those guys who was an explosive shotgun. And everywhere that he goes, he uses that explosive shotgun. And the scene was not recorded like that. They were using like the 2D video games where you look up. Like, for example, you look from a drone. If you've never seen, there's a video from Corridor Digital where they shoot like a Metal Gear Solid type of video where the camera's just up there when they use a drone. And they did something like that, but with the huge scale, because the locations that they used were physical and they were just humongous. The sequence was just too long with no cuts, and the killing streak was unmatched. It was amazing to see. And of course, we saw more of Mr. Nobody's action scenes over there also, where he uses his dog to kill more enemies, and where he finally connected with John, because he saw him protect his dog where he needed to put himself, and he thought like, this is something wrong that I'm doing. And in the final sequence is a staring case sequence there you see in the trailer also, where it's just a humongous scene when you watch. Has also 2 parts in it, because the first part is going alone. He goes alone, going up, killing like 30-40 people in the stairs. And of course, they needed to use the bulletproof clothing to make it possible, because in real life, he was gonna die in 10 minutes. Let's be honest. And in using his IQ as a very clever guy, and of course, seeing all of the 3 movies, we already think that he's gonna beat all of them up. And of course, he does. He does that until he reaches almost at the top, where the Marquis main guy kicks him when he rolls like 135 stairs or something, and then he just gets rescued by Kane, who, even though he is over there to kill him, he's doing that for a purpose. And I think John Wick, as he was doing everything also for a purpose, he has their stance also while he was doing that. And he was doing that because of his daughter, so he needed to do this last job, killing John Wick. So John Wick, I think he accepted that and he respected that, like he was like that. Okay, I don't want to die, and you want to save your daughter, so I think it's respectful both ways. So they go together to go in the top of the building as they needed to reach out the final destination, and they just go through all of those ways, killing, murdering all of them. And there's not too much to describe all of that. I think it's that, and you need to go watch this movie. He made already $130 million at the first opening weekend. This movie is gonna reach $500 million easily. And just to finish off everything about this review, if you've ever seen Zachary Levi's video where he's claiming people to go see Shazam, I have a recommendation. If you are with your family, with your kids, go watch Shazam. I did not watch it, but I think your kids are gonna like it, because I think they go to see John Wick, they're gonna be shocked with so many fighting scenes. But you're going alone with your friends, or just going alone, maybe with your girlfriend who likes crazy stuff like you do, go watch John Wick, because it's of course not a movie for kids. But if you are like over 14 years old, go watch it. It is perfect. It's amazing. They need to give him all the money that he needs, because they need to produce more and more and more and more and more movies about this franchise that is so amazing. So thank you guys so much for watching. This is going to be a huge video for me. So please don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. This is one of my favorite franchises of all time. So I will see you guys on the next video, on the next review. So goodbye and peace.